And so at this point, I'm thinking about how this piece is going to be decorated. And this pot will get carving on the top 2/3 or so, and then a more runny glaze that interacts with that carving. And the bottom third or so is going to have a more stable glaze. And that's for a few reasons. I like how that runny glaze, reacts over the carving and it gets channeled to create a different layer of pattern. But firing in a soda kiln, which is what I generally fire in, you don't always have control over how much those glazes are going to run. And so partially out of practicality, I've been using more stable glazes on the bottom half. And that way I don't have a whole kiln load of pots to grind when it comes time to unload the kiln. So, sometimes those practical considerations can go right into the aesthetic considerations too. So just kind of getting rid of that information on the surface of the pot that reads as a thrown surface. I'll leave a little bit on the inside to indicate that it is, handmade on a potter's wheel, but I'm less interested on that information being on the outside of the pot. Now for cleaning up the rim of a pot, I just cut a little strip of clay bag. It's a heavier gauge plastic, and so it's durable. It won't get kind of stretched and tattered so much. But the great thing that I really use it for is, with a chamois, when you smooth the rim, it's just dispersing that damp clay, and that's going to soak in to the clay on the rim there and make that weaker. Well, I'm trying to really make the rim be, at least when it's thrown, the structure of the pot, and so I don't want wet clay kind of distributed over that. So I use this to actually kind of shave away any of that wet clay that's on the surface. And you can see that it actually picks up that clay instead of just kind of spreading it out. And the great thing, again, kind of like the sponge that I've used from the pyrometric cone box, is that usually you're going to have that on hand. I lose a whole lot of tools around my studio, so the more I can come up with things that are right there at hand, the better off I am. So now it's time to break this form up into the two separate parts. I use these MKM tools, ribs. They're stainless steel and they're really heavy gauge. I used to use wood ribs a lot, and the thing is that they change in shape over time. These will as well, but it takes a lot longer for them to change. So I prefer using these, and I have, half a dozen different shapes and sizes, and can't really say enough about how much I like these tools. And so this particular shape is really great for the inside of this cup. And so I'll go without touching the outside, because the outside of the pot is pretty much the surface that I'm already looking for at this point. I'll just slowly start taking and shaping that form into the shape that I'm looking for here. And I like to kind of bring the waist of this form in a little bit, and so I'll get it damp and wet my hands and just do a really subtle kind of collaring move on this part of the pot here. And then it's just a matter of taking my shaping rib and kind of defining the two parts of the pot at this point. Now, to go back to that idea of design following practicality, with that runny glaze on the top section of the pot, sometimes it can really move. And so this not only visually breaks the form into those two parts, but it serves as a glaze catch as well. And you'll see with some of my pots, I actually use that glaze catch in combination with the carving to kind of have selective dripping going down the side of the piece. Okay, so at this point, it's just about done. The last step on this pot is to take, I use one of these kind of little wooden potter's knife tools, and I've sanded that sharp cutting edge down so that it's kind of more rounded off than sharp. And the idea there is when I push this into the side of the pot, I don't really want it to cut through as much as I want it to just kind of push that side of the pot in. And I'll look on the inside and I'll push it right almost to that breaking point. And the idea there is to really kind of give the bottom section of this pot almost like a flesh-like quality where it really softens up that form. And so by pushing it in like that, you get a real sense of what the clay character was at this point in the making of the pot. And that's something that I'm really interested in communicating with the work, is that feel of the clay when it was, before it was fired, when it was damp clay. And I've started recently doing something where I push it so far to where sometimes that tip will actually break through. And I found that when I'm glazing these pots, I can actually fill in a little bit with the brush glaze in that area. And so you actually get light passing through that little glaze window. So as you're drinking, you know, the light is passing through the wall of the pot. And then as I release it, I'll actually slide it down so that that motion of pushing in isn't reversed by pulling straight off of it. So if you slide it down, it keeps it pushed in there. And actually the tip of the tool is breaking that glaze catch. And so when the glaze cascades down, it'll actually get channeled along the glaze catch and concentrate in that spot specifically. And then I just kind of eyeball it and sometimes get it a little bit back close to round, and I can use this shaping rib on the inside to get it nice and round and centered again. Now, a little word here on throwing. You know, I was taught from early on that if you have to cut too much clay away from the bottom of a pot, it probably means that you're not the best of potters. And I've never really bought into that. I feel like there's definitely a time and a place for extra clay. And at this point, I kind of buttress this form out quite a bit, and it's really helpful to have that extra support down there. So I've really ignored those little voices from the past when it comes to things like that, and it makes my job more fun to do as a potter and really easier, actually. So I'm going to actually just cut off some of this extra clay at this point, and that'll make the trimming go a little bit quicker later on. So I cut that away. I'm left-handed, if you haven't noticed, and so I'm doing things sometimes a little bit opposite, but it doesn't make all that much difference. So, and then a little trick that is kind of helpful for me is to get this extra clay off. I'll just float water right down that tool and into that area at the base there. And then it's just a matter of taking the pin tool and undercutting that, and that clay just pops right off. And so when I'm throwing a series of these, I'll just cut them off right after I've finished. I throw them right on the wheel head and then just lift it off and set it on a board that would just be right off to the side of the wheel.